Mornings at the pond were very cheerful. Colourful birds chirped in the big green trees. Dragonflies buzzed above the cool water. Little fish enjoyed the first rays of sun. Everyone was out and about, getting ready to start the day. Everyone, that is, but a very sleepy duckling. Her name was Mimi. Mimi's nest was warm and cosy. It was built in a hole in a big willow tree. Snuggled up inside, Mimi was safe. On warm days like this, she didn't need protection from the weather. But when it was raining, she could bundle up inside and not feel a single drop of water on her wings. When the wind blew, the tree's long branches rustled gently. They sounded sweet, just like a lullaby. This was Mimi's home. Mimi loved these long summer days. All the sunlight meant plenty of time for adventures. Every day she had exciting ideas for something new to do. She could find small leaves to float on the pond like boats. She could dig for worms. Or maybe she and the other ducklings could play all afternoon until it was time to go home. But Mimi had a problem. She just loved to sleep. She loved to sleep so much that she couldn't find time to try all of the exciting things she thought of. Mimi had a hard time waking up in the morning. She'd slowly pull herself out of her nest and go to the grass for breakfast. But her eyelids would feel heavy, and she'd always quack quietly for a few more minutes of sleep. Because she was always sleepy, Mimi also loved to nap. In the afternoon, she'd sometimes find herself dozing off at the strangest times. Once, she fell asleep right as one of the other ducklings was telling her a story. It was lucky she woke up in time to hear the ending. Her friends didn't seem to mind, but Mimi did. She just wasn't sure how to stay awake. Mimi's favourite time of the day was evening. She and her family would sit together on the grass and nibble on worms and other tasty treats. After dinner, she'd snuggle up in her nest, ready for a long night's sleep. Mimi looked forward to her dreams. That was where she'd have her adventures. Flying high above the pond, or swimming across it like a brave little duckling. It was that kind of dream Mimi was finishing now. She was tucked into her nest, enjoying the very last whispers of sleep, when dreams fade and the morning comes into view. Mimi woke up smiling. Today was the day that things would change, she thought. Today, she was going to stay awake. She put her mind to it. and she was a determined little duckling. She opened her sleepy eyes and looked around. She knew she had slept late and was curious what the other ducklings were doing. Not far from her quiet nest, the little blue pond was very busy. Some of her friends were in the middle of swimming lessons with their parents. Behind them, a pair of curious storks inspected the mud. Frog families croaked together on round lily pads. It seemed like everyone was having a very exciting morning. Mimi thought about the happy frogs. They were funny creatures, small, green, and often very wet. Their necks moved and their eyes bulged every time they started singing. As she thought about their proud croaks, Mimi began to quack. Singing in the morning was one of her favourite activities too. It helped her feel more awake. She quacked a song about a frog family. She got to the part about their slippery toes, and it made her giggle. She giggled so hard she ruffled her feathers. Oh dear, thought Mimi. I've got to fix that. She quacked a little more quietly and softly rustled her feathers back into place. She blinked her eyes and yawned, folding her fluffy yellow wings behind her. Then, with the sun already high in the sky, Mimi finally stepped out of her nest. She stretched her body and spread her wings. Then, swaying from side to side, Mimi walked slowly toward the water. It was not far at all. But for Mimi, who took short steps, it was a nice, long stroll. Her tummy rumbled. She was hungry for breakfast. She stopped for a moment and looked around. Peeking out of the grass was a delicious-looking worm. With her little flat bill, she plucked the worm out of the dirt and ate it up. It was the perfect meal for a duckling like Mimi. With her tummy full, she looked up at the sky. It reminded her of a big, blue fishbowl. In it, the clouds swam happily like fish. She looked back down again. Around the pond, all of the plants were bright green. Thirsty trees leaned toward the water. Tall grasses moved with the wind. The pond glittered in the sunlight. Big pink water lilies floated on the surface. The blooming flowers smelled sweet. But even though they smelt nice, Mimi knew she couldn't eat them. They were just for sniffing. But she couldn't spend all day sniffing flowers and eating worms, she thought. It was time to go to the pond. As she got closer to the water's edge, she saw a few of her friends playing in the soft green grass. She quacked hello. Her friends quacked back and waved their little wings. They were happy to see Mimi. She waddled down to where they were standing in a circle. "What are you doing?" Mimi asked. "We're sharing stories," her friends said. They were telling each other about their talents. "May I join?" Mimi asked. "Of course," her friends said. Now Mimi just had to think about what she did best. One of the ducklings said he was very good at swimming. "How fun!" the other ducklings quacked. Another said she'd just learned to fly. "How exciting!" the other ducklings said. A third said she was very good at finding food. That sounded delicious, Mimi thought. Mimi imagined a little pile of seeds, brown and black and smooth like pebbles. She imagined what they would taste like on her tongue. And as she started to daydream about snacks, she felt herself getting sleepy. Mimi yawned. Her eyelids felt heavy. Just as it was her turn to tell her friends about her talent, Mimi fell asleep. Her little body relaxed. She plopped down on the ground, tucked her bill into her feathers, and started to snore. Deep asleep, she felt like she was floating. Maybe she'd go visit the stars in the sky. Or maybe she'd croak with the frogs on a lily pad all night long. Just as she was thinking of frogs, she heard a loud croak nearby. It was so loud, in fact, that it awoke Mimi from her slumber. She pulled her bill out of her feathers and looked around with big sleepy eyes. Her friends weren't standing around her anymore. Instead, they were in the shallow water, splashing around happily with their little orange feet. "Oh dear," she thought. She must have dozed off. That was just what she promised not to do. "Oh dear," Mimi thought again. She shook herself off and stood back up. Carefully, she waddled down to her friends. When she reached the other ducklings, she shook her head. "I'm sorry," Mimi said. "I didn't mean to fall asleep." The other ducklings crowded around her. "It's okay," they told Mimi. They patted her gently with their wings. "You were just showing us your talent," they said. "My talent?" Mimi asked. She didn't understand. She hadn't learned to fly or swim yet, and she wasn't particularly good at finding bugs to eat. What was her talent? "Why, sleeping, of course," the other ducklings said. "You are the best at sleeping." Mimi had never thought of it that way before, but she realized it was true. She could sleep in late and nap any time during the day. All she had to do was think about sleep or snacks or anything else, and she'd start to yawn. At night, she felt herself drifting off to dreamland as soon as her little head hit the pillow. "I guess I am good at sleeping," she said. She smiled and quacked with joy. She really was a very sleepy duckling. With that thought, she realized she was getting sleepy once again. She looked up and saw the sun was already beginning to set. Her family would be waiting for her for dinner. After a beautiful day spent with her friends, it was time to say goodnight. She quacked a quick goodbye and waved to her friends. She'd see them all another day. Mimi waddled back up to her family's nest in the big willow tree. There she found them sitting in the grass, enjoying their evening meal. She nibbled at some bugs. When her tummy was full, she walked slowly into the nest. The air was warm. The wind smelled like pretty flowers. She could smell the sweet perfume of the lilies floating quietly on the pond. Mimi took a deep breath in and allowed her little body to relax. She tucked her wings behind her and nestled her bill between her feathers. Her feathers were soft and fluffy, like a warm blanket, and perfect for snuggling. She could hear the croaking of the frogs, sitting on lily pads, singing their soft evening songs. What a wonderful day, Mimi thought to herself. She was proud of what she'd learned today. She had always thought that maybe she slept too much. But her friends helped her realize she was perfect just the way she was. And with that thought hovering in her mind like a soft white cloud, Mimi drifted off into a cozy sleep.